On the 15th of March, the Dutch public will be voting in their national parliamentary elections. But what are the major parties? What are the major issues? And what's the most likely outcome? I plan to explain that and more in this short video. The Dutch parliament is made up of two houses, upper and lower. Of these, the lower house has 150 MPs which are voted on by the whole country every 4 years, or if a government collapses, which is surprisingly often. The system of voting in the Netherlands is proportional representation. This means that instead of having constituencies, as in the UK, or electors and states, as in the US, when the country votes, the seats in Parliament are given to each party depending on the proportion of the vote they got. For example, if one party got 30% of the vote, they'd get 30% of the seats in Parliament. There's more detail on the ins and outs of the Dutch system in the description below. This system fosters the creation of smaller parties, and means that there is almost never a majority in the Dutch government, so the country is almost always run by a coalition of parties. On the subject of parties, the Netherlands has a crazy amount of them, with around 14 different parties expected to win seats. Over the past few years, Dutch politics has seen a move away from the three major parties of government, from the centre, right and left, with fringe parties like Geert Wilders' radical right-wing PVV party gaining more support. But in summary, the main parties are the Christian Democratic Appeal Party, or CDA, from the centre-right, the Liberals, or VVD, a centre-right party who currently hold the most seats in Parliament and whose leader, Mark Rutte, is currently Prime Minister, the Labour Party, or PVDA, who are one of the three major parties but are expected to lose around 70% of their seats this election, and finally Geert Wilders' far-right Party of Freedom, or PVV, which, while new, is expected to win big in this election, possibly becoming the largest party. However, there are also loads of smaller parties that will pick up a few seats each. These include the Liberal Progressives D66, the Socialist Party, the Green Left Party, the Party for Animals, the 50-plus Party for pensioners, the Eurosceptic Forum for Democracy Party, Think, a party which is mainly for Muslim immigrants, and finally there's also a party called the Niet-Stemmers, or non-voters, who say that they stand for the 25% of the Dutch population who are expected not to vote, and that if they get any MPs, they won't vote in Parliament either. The Dutch economy is doing quite well, with unemployment at a 5-year low and economic growth at a healthy 2.3%. Refugees remain a concern, but not as much as during the peak of last year's crisis, mainly due to far less asylum seekers registering the Netherlands than expected. Globalisation, the EU, Dutch values, sovereignty, and of course immigration and integration will also be important topics. Wilders often talks of Henk and Ingrid, a made-up Dutch couple who suffer at the hands of the corrupt liberal elite, the evil EU, and of course entitled Muslim immigrants. Speaking of Wilders, he will be the main focus of the election. He has gained international attention due to his radical anti-Muslim views. His one-page party manifesto, linked to an English version in the description below, is almost entirely based around anti-Muslim policies, such as closing down all mosques, the banning of the Quran, and not taking in any refugees or asylum seekers. Most polls show Wilders' PVV becoming the largest party, with around 26 seats. However, since this is not nearly enough to form a government, as well as the fact that almost all parties have said they wouldn't work with the PVV, it seems quite likely that Wilders may be left out of the coalition government that will come from this election. The most likely result is probably a large centrist or slightly left-leaning coalition, including many small parties. But in this day and age, it's a mug's game to predict results. While the Netherlands alone may not be that important in the grand scheme of things, the results of the election will set the stage for the other major European elections happening this year, those of France and Germany. If Wilders' PVV does well, this may show a pattern of radical right-wing parties doing well across Europe, which of course went so brilliantly last time. But if the PVV does worse than expected, it may show a push against the movement which may have culminated in the election of President Donald Trump. Either way, we'll have to wait and see. Thanks for watching.